Hey there, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Carrie and we are bluescitypickin, and I am a part-time reseller who goes around to estate sales, thrift stores, yard sales to look for things to flip for a profit on eBay and only eBay. I put out roughly 3 reselling videos a week, and the majority, or at least one of them, will be a what sold. Sometimes it's 2 a week, depending on how many things I sold. And then usually some type of haul or educational video will fill in the other 1 to 2 videos a week. So if you like that kind of content, I would genuinely appreciate a subscribe, a like, a comment. We are marching towards 1,000 subs, and I am planning on doing a giveaway. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'm definitely planning on doing something. So super excited. At the time of this video, we have hit 800 subs and we are continuing to grow. So very excited about the progress. This is what sold the weekend of July 10th, 11th, and 12th. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We sold 25 items with 23 orders. So there was one multi-quantity order of 3 that I sold. The total gross sales, so all in what the buyer paid, was $478.37. The price that I agreed upon with the buyer, excluding taxes and shipping, was $327.26. I had about $60.50 cost of goods for these items, so my gross profit was right around $200, which very excited, because when you add that to the first part of the week where I made $370 in profit, this was a really nice week for me, bringing in almost $600 in profit for the week, which is one of my better weeks in total. I also sold, about 51 items this past week. If you look at the Sunday through Saturday, which is what some of my what solds are, depending on how many I sell. So right now my goal is to clear out some of my older inventory, we're not gonna say bad buys, but just things I wouldn't buy again as a reseller, because it's either a lower profit or it has a really long tail on it and I just don't want to keep it anymore. So learning a lot. What I will say though is that my average profit across these 25 items was $7.94 per item, which is very, very low for me. So I had 24 of the 25 were bread and butter, and 1 was above my average that I was shooting for of 15. I'm okay with it because the first part of the week, I had a very nice average. And if you haven't watched that, go check out Ching number 47. I had a really nice average the first part of the week at like almost $15. And eBay is a roller coaster, and it's all about just being happy with the sales that you're getting and focusing on continuous growth and improvement in your sourcing and what you're listing, etc. So perfectly content with these 3 days being mostly bread and butter items. Most of them were easy shippers, so it wasn't like I spent 2 hours shipping these items. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that sold was a Fisher-Price lot of vintage car, police, taxi, Jeep, stop sign, and some figures. I picked this up from a Facebook Marketplace pickup. You'll hear a couple items sold this particular week from that, where I bought out a former antique booth person's Little People stash as they were cleaning out their storage units. It was a great buy. I love vintage Fisher-Price Little People things. My usual go-to is that my son and my daughters will actually play with them. It's mostly my son at this point. They will play with them for a while and then I'll list them, but we have fun with the items before we sell them. So we get some fun out of it and then we move move them on to a new home. So I had $5 into this, and they sold for $17.10, and so I made $9.27, and it sold the same day I listed it. Next up is another set of vintage Fisher-Price from that buyout. These were, I lotted up all of the wooden bodies that I couldn't find that went with the sets or the particular like buildings or boats or whatever. And so I had $2 into these. They sold for $12.60, and so I made $7.49 in one day after listing. Next up is something I've had a really long time, and honestly, I'm like 99.9% sure I just relisted these. This was a set of vintage pencils. They were unsharpened. The boxes were not complete, but there were 19 of them in there. I got this from an auction last summer. So it's July 2025. I bought this in June of 2024, where I bought this massive steel case desk that I actually use outside in my garage for photos and like all of my things. And I paid $2 for it. And I pulled everything out of the desk to sell. And this is one of the things that was still left in the desk that hadn't sold yet. So they sold for $9.90. I have nothing into it. And so I made $8.06 after 381 days. Next is another Little People item. This is a couch and coffee table and 2 chairs. I had $1 into these. They sold for $10, and so I made $6.35 after 14 days. Next is something I wouldn't buy again. This was actually, I thought it was like a miracle suit with a top when I bought it at the bins. I didn't look super close. This was just a top with a tank underneath it. Size medium, so not the best size either. And that day at the bins, my cost of goods was $2.55, which is actually really high for me. Usually it's about $1. And so when I sent an offer and it was accepted for $8.46, I went ahead and took that, and I made $2.34 after 69 days. I didn't want it sitting for another swim season because it just doesn't seem to be the thing for Miracle Suit to pick up, but Miracle Suit's a great brand. Next is something I picked up at the bins very recently. This was a Lala Loopsy Littles doll. Now, I know that some of the larger dolls, like they don't sell super great, but this one was about this big and she had all of her accessories. So I decided to look her up, and she was worth picking up for a rough cost of goods of $1. She sold for $12.60, and so I made $9.30 after just 3 days. Next item is another bins pickup. This is a Sac Roots crossbody purse, but it was a smaller one. It had the strap, $1 cost of goods. The buyer offered me $12. I went ahead and accepted, and so I made $8.85 after 31 days. Next is a set of Allegria clogs. I picked these up when Goodwill had their 50% off of everything sale back in June. They had them marked for $20, so I got them for $10. I would have never bought these for $20, but for $10, and they looked like new. I went ahead and snagged these and one other pair that has already sold. The buyer paid $35.10, and so I made $17.55 after 18 days, which is just great. Next is something I don't think I would pick up again unless it was in better condition. So I didn't realize how like dirty the inside was and how I wasn't able to just soak it and clean it like really easily. This was a Nissan thermal cooker made in Japan. It was very nice quality. Have $1 cost of goods into it from the bins. It sold I got an offer for $15, and I just went ahead and took it because it was pretty large. And so I made $11.75 after just 7 days. So fast seller, not as big of a profit as I would have liked. I assume if you get them in better condition, hopefully it would still be a good seller and you'd make a bit more profit on it. Next is one of the ones that I love, right? So I love selling toys. This was a vintage furry hairy monster puppet. It was definitely from the 90s. The clothes were like Saved by the Bell with like the bright colors and the triangles and the geometric print. I loved it. So I paid $1 for this at an estate sale back in June. It sold for $17.10. So I made $13.11 after 17 days, which is just amazing. Next item is a set of Rugrats sheets. This was a twin flat and fitted sheet. It was from 1997. I've had since last November. So I got an offer for $13. I went ahead and accepted it. I paid $1 for these at a yard sale, and so I made $9.52, but they did take 243 days to sell. Let's see. Next is a Tupperware measuring cup. This was an 8-cup measuring cup. It was not in the best condition. It did not have a lid. I had $1 into it from the bins, and so I sold it for $6.80 and made $4.89 in just 28 days. I do pick up some vintage Tupperware, not all of it, but I do like picking up the measuring cups. They do sell pretty regularly for me, so if I can get them for $1 or less and turn them into, you know, a $5 bill, I'm happy to do that. Next is a Purolino white shift dress. I paid $7.11 for this at a regular Goodwill back in April. It sold for $16.96, and so I made $5.77 after 70 days. I don't think I would pick that up again. It was nice quality, but I think it being white and not like a soft linen or a nice brand, it had a little bit of an impact on what I could sell it for. If I found it at the bins, I would 100% pick it up. But for $7.11, I don't think so. Next is a Grumpy Cat plush. This is from the brand Gund. I had 50 cents from this into this at Goodwill, the bins. It sold for $8.10, and so I made $5.68 after 21 days. Next is another set of my Star Wars silicone molds. I picked up about 8 of these at the bins for $1 each. This one sold for $8.50, and so I made $5.42 after 52 days. I think I have 2 left. Next is the multi-quantity order. These were salad plates. They are from the 1930s in Czechoslovakia. They're absolutely gorgeous. I have more of this pattern. I think this is the first pieces I've sold, and they've been listed for a year. They sold for $7.61 a piece. I have 51 cents into each one, and so I made a total of $19.77 on this order after 393 days. Next is another thing I don't think I would pick up again. These are a set of 3 cream colored Christmas. They were like a pastel-y embroidered, they were fingertip towels. I picked these up at an estate sale in April of 2024 for $1 a piece apparently. So I had $3 into them. I got an offer for $7 and I said adios, and I made $2.33 after 457 days, and they have moved on. It's funny, like if you look at what I'm flashing up on the screen, if you see like dark green in the background, I used to take pictures right here. And so if it's got dark green in the background, it's been listed for over a year for sure. And so I am pulling some of those down, retaking pictures and relisting them if the, like say the cake is worth the bake on investing a few more minutes of my time. If not, I'm just kind of letting it ride, and we'll see if they sell. If not, then we'll make another decision come next yard sale time. Next item that sold was a jumbo 10-inch Funko Pop. This was Stitch. He was loose out of the box. This came from my daughter's clean out, and so we have nothing into it. It sold for $12, and so we made $8.74 10 days after it was listed. Next is a Monsters Inc. Sully like fur and horns Disney Parks headband. Also came from my daughter's clean out. It $0 into it at this point. They sold for $10.20. After 7 days, I made $7.82. Next is a pair of Keen women's shoes. At the time that I picked them up, I did not realize they were missing their insert, or I would not have picked them up. So they definitely took a little bit longer to sell. I paid $10.36 for these. Would not have paid that if I'd known the inserts were missing. They finally sold for $21.25, and so I made $5.94 after 150 days, but they are gone. Next is something that I picked up at the bins very recently as well. This was a Sesame Street Elmo on the go ABC alphabet letter carrying case. It was super duper cute. I had $1 into it. It sold for $10, and so I made $5.95 after 4 days. Last couple of items. The next one is a pair of Brighton earrings. I picked these up at an estate sale back in March where they had like bags of jewelry. I would have bought a lot more, but they were doing cash only, and I didn't have a lot of cash on me that day, and I had to get to kids things that day as well, so I wasn't able to go back. But I had $4.17 cost of goods into the earrings. They sold for $16.11, and so I made $8.61 after 94 days. And then last but certainly not least is another vintage Fisher-Price from that buyout. This was the animals. There was the circus, farm, zoo animals. It had like a scale, some fence pieces. So I just lotted them all up. I had $5 into these, and they sold for $24.65, and so I made $13.99 after 18 days. I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning. My fastest sale was probably within the day. The oldest item that I had sell were those fingertip towels at 457 days, and then my average was 115, which is much higher than, like, if you watch some of my earlier cha-chings, I usually sit around 90 days. So I consider that 100% sell-through, but as I've mentioned, trying to clear out some of my older stuff, and 115 is a-okay with me right now. As far as where I sourced to produce the profits this week, about 40% of my profits came from Goodwill, 15 from auctions, 12 from estate sales, 23% from yard sales, and then a little mishmash of some other things. Genres. In general, I usually have about 50% of my sales coming from clothing, shoes, and accessories, but I know I have been listing less of those lately. So I only had about 30% come from clothing, shoes, and accessories. About 30% came from high school household goods, including like kitchen items and decor. And then about 36% came from toys, including board games, vintage, modern, all the kinds of toys and collectibles there. So all in all, a really nice close out to the week. A couple things that I've been doing to try to keep my sales up is I did run a sale on these 3 days, or these at least 2 of the days, not on the 10th. On the 11th and 12th, I was running a 10% off sale, not a coupon, a sale. So some of the items that did sell were because of that, and they did get a 10% discount. Way I look at it is I would send them an offer for 10% off anyway, and if they're making a real-time decision, it's fine. So that is one thing that I did do during this time frame. I figured I'd be transparent with y'all about that. So I appreciate you stopping by. As I mentioned at the beginning, I genuinely would appreciate a like, a subscribe, a comment, just anything to show the YouTube algorithm that you like my content. If you like my content, if you don't do anything, that's cool, just move on. And we will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for stopping by. I appreciate you more than you know. See ya.